This is a Sustainable Today special presentation.
A community cannot be sustainable. It's a systemic process. Only a system can be sustained. Mm-hmm. The idea of an individual being sustainable, or even a community being sustainable, comes from the illusion of separation that we have. We can't live separately. You cannot extract yourself from the fact that we are now an interpenetrated global species.
The leadership sees it, but the people themselves are kind of caught in the middle between, oh, there's this eco-village idea out there, but we have a TV and we see how people are living elsewhere. So one of the questions that people ask is, how do people make decisions in eco-villages? When you get 50 to 300 people together, people ask, well, what do eco-villagers argue about? Well, I'd say the main thing they argue about is sustainability.
Our world is an amazing, complex living organism, and we coexist in a symbiotic relationship. With this great power comes a great responsibility to ensure the future by taking steps to be sustainable today.
I began to do some work on what I call Gaian governance, which is basically looking at the Earth as a living system and then asking ourselves, what would it take to live within the carrying capacity of that living system? The examples that I found that were the most integrated and the most hands-on and the deepest, I would say, at the level of everyday life were eco-villages. So I went around the world looking at communities on 5 continents, many of them intentional communities, and many of them also traditional rural villages in the global south that are trying to integrate eco-village principles. Of all the communities that I visited, the ones in Africa, of course, have the smallest ecological footprints. And, you know, we talk about natural building. Well, this is natural building. This is just a traditional hut that my translator, Jibby, built for himself and his family. Now, what is an eco-village in Africa? That is a really good question. They don't think of themselves as eco-villagers by and large, but this village network that I visited, COLAFIFA, which means the Committee to End Hunger, it's a French acronym, got started in the 80s. They joined the Global Eco-Village Network because they understand that eco-village principles are what they need also in their villages. So what's happening in Africa's villages, as with most of the developing world, is that the young people, especially young men, are leaving because there's really nothing for them there. Now, because the men are gone, the women have to be in charge of things. And so there's this kind of de facto women's empowerment as a consequence of the fact that the men are leaving. So the question in these villages is, how do you keep young people in the village? Well, you make them economically, socially, and ecologically sustainable, which means finding ways of actually growing food so that the food doesn't have to be coming in from foreign aid or from industrialized agriculture, and finding a way for women to have power. And so women's literacy programs, microfinance, all of this was part of what COLAFIFA was doing. These people have not left their village, and they are going back to growing sesame. This is a sesame field when the whole country had been planted by the British and French, or under their direction, in peanuts. And it turns out that was a terrible idea if you want to feed your population. This is a village that decided that they needed to find a way to keep their men in the village. And so a lot of men go out on boats trying to get to Spain or Italy. Many of them die. This was their idea. Rather than go to sea and die trying to get to Europe, try to go to sea and live bringing food back for your village. And he actually carved this boat by hand with a hand tool. He showed it to me. This is one tree. 10 men can be on the boat at the same time, and they're bringing tilapia back and being able to feed their village. This is very impressive.
And it really made me think how important it is to find meaningful rites of passage for young men.
The leadership sees it, but the people themselves are kind of caught in the middle between, oh, there's this eco-village idea out there, but we have a TV and we see how people are living elsewhere. You know, we want to live this way. So it's really, you know, you really see them caught in the middle here.
My personal favorite, though, is Oroville, because they're founded on the principle of human unity. The idea that underneath all of our human diversity, there is this core unifying spirit, you might say, and that we can tap into that. And when we do, we become immensely creative.
One of the things that I find interesting in eco-villages in the global south is how they take indigenous building techniques and play with them. So this is ferro cement, but with cob basically around it, molded around a traditional, kind of more traditional hut made from mud bricks, but painted yellow, so it's pretty. I stayed in this place. This is in Oroville in South India.
Oroville does some really wonderful things with villages. You know, free healthcare, free schools that are way better than the government schools. But this is the kind of experiment that they do, many different kinds of experiments. For the most part, Oroville builds with compressed earth bricks. They have a machine that they developed called the Aurum, which I write about in the book. It's a hand-operated machine. It's super efficient. It's actually fun to use. You can turn out really high-quality compressed earth bricks fairly quickly and very inexpensively. They've used this all over the world, especially in disaster areas after earthquakes. They use it in reconstruction after several earthquakes. They do this not because they're primarily environmentalists. They actually understand the earth to be the embodiment of spirit. So for them, building in this way is actually a spiritual practice. So this is one of the interesting kind of integrations that I saw. So they're almost entire, well, a lot of Oroville is off-grid. And frankly, a lot of people in Oroville don't really care about environmental issues for the most part. They're more interested in spiritual awakening, and they don't think so much in these terms. This is an experiment in human unity. That's what they call themselves. They're trying to live the principle of human unity. So 2,000 mostly Europeans living among 40,000 Tamil villagers. You're going to have some tension there, but at the same time, there's this commitment. You know, in a way, Oroville is like a microcosm of humanity. It's like all the problems right there. One of the first things that they did was they planted trees because they were inhabiting a desertified plateau. And so now this is one of the few places on Earth where biodiversity is actually increasing. Every year they find new insects and birds that they've never seen before. It's so nice to ride through the forest in Oroville. Oh my gosh, the birds and the air, and it's really beautiful. And also, the forests are the primary source of firewood for the local villagers. So you see women all the time going with bundles of wood, which when Oroville got started didn't exist because the forest was completely gone. This is Oroville's Mantra Mandir. This is a meditation chamber, and it is really beautiful, and it's an amazing place to meditate if any of you do that sort of thing. The way the light comes through is at the top, there's a solar tracker that tracks the sun from sunup to sundown and directs a beam of light down to a crystal ball. They brought together the scientists and engineers to do it. They've pioneered some really amazing things. And by the way, this is one of the only buildings in Oroville that's air conditioned. So it also sucks up some energy. For the most part, though, it's being done on solar power. I mean, this community really believes in spiritual awakening, and this Mantra Mandir, which means the house of the mother, is the place where they think a lot of that's going to happen. But they also meditate under a banyan tree, which has a much smaller ecological footprint. And it's huge. This tree measures about 200 feet from one end to the other. I walked it out one time. It's an amazing place. But one of the questions I ask at the end of the book is if what we're about is spiritual awakening and finding ourselves in the larger cosmos. What is the ecological footprint of doing that? You cannot really think about the Global Eco-Village Network without thinking about Sarvodia. This is in Sri Lanka. It's an organization that's the largest NGO in Sri Lanka with 15,000 rural villages, which is half the country's villages. And it's a Gandhian organization, but it's working on Buddhist principles. This is one of the few intentional eco-villages in Cambodia. Lagoswate was built in the aftermath of the tsunami. And the villagers themselves, again, sharing of labor, they built these homes. So they got jobs building their own homes, and they received consultation from Max Lindegar, who's the founder of Crystal Waters EcoVillage in Australia. So it's very much a transnational project. This is all natural building with compressed earth bricks. Each house has a solar panel, and each house has rainwater catchment, a small kitchen garden, and also a larger community garden. And what they say there is, one of their slogans is, "We build the road and the road builds us." And part of the way that the road builds them is that before anything happens, they learn the Sargodha peace meditation. So it's a spiritually based, participatory development network integrating ecological principles. And now Lagoswate is a demonstration site, an educational center for all of the southern part of Sri Lanka and how to integrate eco-village practices into a traditional village. This community in Damanhur in northern Italy, where they live in tree houses, arboreally. And this is a community in a mystical federation called Damanhur. It's a federation of communities, about 1,000 people. And each nucleo or community is dedicated to a particular kind of work. And the work of this nucleo, arboreally, is studying the music of the plants, or how to communicate with plants. Damanhur was one of the most puzzling, I could say easily, was the most puzzling community that I visited. Because on the one hand, they have so much going that you cannot deny that something amazing is happening here. They have, they're doing a tremendous amount around biodiversity. They have a really rich culture. They have so much fun. Play is an integral part of what they're about. They say that growth happens through play. And so they make everything as fun as possible. Everybody there has takes a name, and it might take them years to figure out what their name is. And their first name is an animal, and their second name is a plant. So I interviewed Anaconda Papaya. I interviewed Lizard Chili Pepper. In fact, she was one of the people who did the music of the plants. This is their underground temple. What are their underground temples? We talk about beauty. Damanhur is the most beautiful eco-village that I visited. Believe it or not, this is about 60 feet underground. And they dug these temples without architectural expertise, no civil engineering, no engineers at all, no calculations. They believe that they are inhabiting a part of Gaia that is a central part in Gaia's nervous system. And they, one night, started digging. And in the beginning, when they really hadn't even built many homes or anything, they decided to start digging and build a temple at this nexus of Gaia's nervous system. And it turns out that where they built is sort of miraculously geologically stable, because the way they built is they would have their dreams at night and come together in the morning and talk about their dreams and then decide what to do that day. So there's called the Temples of Humankind. You can go online and take a virtual tour of these temples, and they're really magnificent. Thetemples.org. And this is to give you the sense of yourself in a kind of infinite regress and infinitely related. And it's pretty amazing. This is their hall of metals. They believe that metals have a particular capacity to conduct energy. One of their businesses is they design jewelry that's supposed to conduct energy in a particular way that helps you become more healthy. I don't know about this, but what I do know is that it's beautiful. You know, you really can't deny that. And so something
responds even if you can't understand it. And everything in Damanhur is symbolic. They have their own language, they have their own dances and rituals and practices that they've developed themselves. They're a very creative, very fun community. They believe that human beings are small in relation to nature, and so in their buildings they paint insects and plants very large. And if you die, you will come to life in the form of a life-size painting on the building that you inhabit. They have their own currency, a complementary currency that makes them one of the most prosperous eco-villages as well. This currency really works. It's called a credito, and it's the most successful complementary currency in eco-village that I've seen. They pray and meditate over their money. This community trades only in creditos amongst themselves. And so what that means is that you put your euros to things that you can only buy with euros, and you pay each other in creditos. We say in our money, in God we trust, but do we really? I mean, that money, that money is like, it's an act of trust to give money, because money is irrelevant. We think that money is the economy, but actually the earth and the ecosystems that we depend upon, that's the economy. That's the primary economy. And then there's the secondary economy of the stuff we really need and want, these things, the secondary economy. And then there's the tertiary economy. That's the money that we use to get these things. So what they have figured out is that money is a dream. And they say money is a dream. It is a dream. It's a figment of our imaginations.
Eco-villages have found ways of living that are not so much tied to the cash economy, that are more about relationships. So for instance, in some of the eco-villages that I visited in the rich countries, say in Europe and North America and Australia, people were living on incomes that are just a small fraction of their average country incomes.
This is Ufa Fabrik in Berlin. This is a community that is an urban community, and they got started in the late 70s as a political community. They wanted to offer a model that was beyond capitalism and beyond socialism. And they thought that the common ground for cultural expression would be art and music and theater and dance. And so they were a performance center. And they bring together musicians and artists, traveling artists who are working for peace in one way or another. They also believe in fun. They have their own circus, and they have a circus school because the children wanted to learn how to be in the circus. It's a really dynamic center. They have an organic, locally raised food, or a restaurant and a bakery that produces really delicious bread in a wood-fired oven, traditional methods, but high efficiency because it's German, And until recently, they had more solar panels there than any place else in Germany. So it's a really kind of out there, important urban eco-village. This is Los Angeles EcoVillage, substantially smaller. It's just a group of people who bought a bunch of old, run-down apartment buildings in the inner city. And this is one of their traffic calming events. And my feeling was, if you can do an eco-village in Los Angeles, you can really do it just about anywhere. And one of their main emphases is on bicycling. The mayor of Los Angeles in the last couple of years has gotten onto this too and has become a bicycle advocate himself. Actually got into a bicycle accident. Anyway, and a lot of that's because of Los Angeles EcoVillage, because this is a community of activists. Everybody in Los Angeles EcoVillage is a full-time environmental or social justice activist and or
for fire, water in case of fire. Ecovillages of Ithaca is a co-housing model. They have 3 neighborhoods. And the 3rd neighborhood that's being built now is very efficient. It's passive house, very small dwellings, and less expensive. So they'll be able to bring low-income people in as well. I would say ecologically, the most inspiring to me was Stephen Linden in central Germany. They're trying to live on a one Earth footprint. So they're trying to show that there's a way of living that everybody on the planet could enjoy, which means it would be sustainable for the entire human species. And this is in a country, Germany, where the average ecological footprint is 3 Earths. In Germany, you can't really build new villages or even subdivisions or anything because they have negative population growth. They got this special dispensation to basically be a showcase model for all forms of sustainability, all the water and energy, but also the social technologies. So they're now a teaching center, and the German government has something to do, and the local governments as well. One of the ways that they keep their footprint down is they plow their fields and do their forestry with draft horses. But they also don't use animal inputs in their farming. They do vegan agriculture. They do use animal inputs, human inputs in a good way. That's how they're bringing back their forest. So you can imagine with 150 people, plus many guests coming in, they've got a little supply of fertilizer, and they use it in the forest. So they're making soil, and they're bringing back a deciduous forest. So this is a pine plantation. Nothing grows there but pine. It's complete monoculture, acidic conditions. I walked for hours and never heard a bird. It's like a graveyard or something. Incidentally, this is a community where the day that I arrived, they had their first death. And the funeral also was incredibly beautiful, both aesthetically and ecologically. So this is Stropolis. This is their one of their high density in the rural areas. They believe they're living in the countryside, they should still live cheek by jowl. And this is Stropolis made of straw, and this is the building that was kind of the pioneer straw bale building that enabled the Germans to put straw bale into the building code. Club 99 is a community within Stephen Linden that fell apart because of social conflict, but their goal was to get their ecological footprint down to 10% of the German average. It was documented, they did it for about 5 years, and that would be about 5% of our average. They live very well. They're not primitive. They have Wi-Fi, and they have very high-level philosophical and spiritual conversations. So these are not kind of primitive people at all. So it was really impressive. I was very impressed by Stephen Linden. Swanholm, I just mentioned them because it's a commune. This is a commune that told me that they are allergic to spirituality. But they have income sharing, which means that everybody in the community knows each other's income, and they know the assets that they came into the community with, and the assets go into the common pool. This is a community of about 160 people, and many people want to join because they're very prosperous. They also pioneered the organic food standards for Denmark. They wrote the standards themselves, and then the Danish organic standards, which were very strict, were folded over and had a big influence in the EU standards. So again, this ripple effect. But the reason I highlight the question of spirituality is that we talk about illumination or the softening of the boundaries of ego. Well, if you're doing income sharing like this and living like this, and everything financially is transparent, you're going to be having some softening of the boundaries of ego. Maybe even more so than if you sit around and watch your breath with a group of people. This is one of my favorite communities. This is in Japan, a farming community at the base of Mount Fuji. They grow all of their food. They're 100% food self-sufficient, all organic, in a country that's 1% organic. They work with something they call Konohana Kin, which is it's a formula of life force, effective microorganisms. We now would call it probiotics. And they've been working for the last 20 years to re-envision our relationship with bacteria. They imbibe it, they take it into their own diet, diet every day. This is some of the food that they grow and process and make themselves. So it's beautiful food. It's vegetarian. They are a commune as well. By Japan's tax code, they're called family. They call themselves Konohana family. They are registered as a family with 85 people. I didn't mention music, so every eco-village that I visited has some form of choir or some kind of like collective way of doing music. This is their teacher, Isedan, who I talk about quite a lot, a really inspiring guy. And this is a painting in their hall. I asked them what is the meaning of this. It struck me, it's interesting. They said the baby is humanity. We are like a baby right now with the earth in our hands. Kind of feels that way, doesn't it? Like, we don't really know what we're doing, but wow, welcome to the Anthropocene. But actually we are held by this larger process, this larger evolutionary process, if you will. They would say the divine, and that there's something that resonates as true in that, and also gives us a sense of responsibility, like we need to grow up. Our lives cannot be sustainable individually. You can try all you want, and if you're any kind of functioning member of society, even here at Kailash EcoVillage, I bet your eco-village, your ecological footprint here is not even 2 Earths. It's almost impossible to get it down to 2 Earths. I tried. It's more possible if you're living in community, that's for sure. But still, we only have 1 Earth. So what are we going to do? It becomes a global problem. That's what sustainability is. Sustainability means a 1 Earth footprint because it means living within the bounds of our own planet.